So what's everybody? I'm Nick, and today we're going to talk about drilled and slotted brake rotors. So recently I was going to my parents' house to have a dinner and started smelling something burning and had a pretty good idea what it was. It smells like brakes. So I was about 5 minutes from my parents' place when I started smelling this. Pulled into their driveway, got out. You can smell it pretty good. It starts smoking a little bit. It wasn't crazy, but you can tell they got really hot. So pretty good indication that I had a broken caliper. Didn't know this at the time. It's a 2011 F-250. Ford actually used ceramic pieces inside the brake caliper, which we'll go over what all that means in a little bit. Don't know if they still do. I'm not sure they do. I know the replacement piece that I got, they replaced these parts with steel parts. So, got home, did all the brakes, fixed it, got to drive it again, completely safe. But I had a warped rotor, which you can pretty easily tell if you're driving on a warped rotor. For the most part, unless it's really bad. If you're driving, you won't really feel it. If you step on the brake, you'll start feeling your vehicle shake a little bit. You'll feel your brake pedal pushing back against your foot, like pulsating. That's a pretty good sign that it's a warped rotor. I don't think anything else besides something like a broken caliper would cause that. It's gotta get pretty hot to warp these things, but when you do warp them, it's pretty noticeable. So what we're gonna talk about is specifically what the slots and the holes do on drilled and slotted brake rotors. We'll talk about who might need them, pros and cons to having drilled and slotted, because there are some cons, but for the most part they're not crazy bad. It's not gonna make or break anything. Before we talk about the drilled holes and the slots on the rotor, we're gonna talk about how a disc brake system actually works. So we'll talk about how this works. First, I'm going to label the parts real quick. I color-coded them. It's a very crude drawing. Not entirely accurate, but the basics are there. This green line, just your brake line. When you step on your brakes, you're adding hydraulic pressure. That pressure goes through the lines and into the caliper. This purple piece surrounding a lot of this, I hope you can see the purple in the video. This is your brake caliper. It's that big chunky piece of metal that sits behind your wheels. It goes over your disc. You can see your disc through your wheels, your rims, whatever you want to call it. Inside the caliper, you have these pistons. These yellow pieces are pistons. When you push on your brakes, these squeeze. These push out of the caliper a little bit onto these blue pieces, which is your brake pads. When someone mentions they're going to go do a brake job or they're replacing the brakes, this is what they're replacing 9 times out of 10. This long black piece is your brake rotor. I wouldn't consider it a wearable item. Sometimes you need to replace this, like in the event you warp a rotor like I did. Otherwise, you don't need to replace your rotor. I've driven vehicles 200,000 miles. The rotor's in great shape unless it gets warped. So while you're driving, everything here is stationary. This does not rotate. This black piece is what rotates with your tire. That is what your brake pads grab to slow down your wheels, in turn slowing down your car. So when you're driving, your rotor is turning and you go to hit your brakes. You send hydraulic pressure through your brake lines, goes into the brake caliper, pushes on your pistons push on your brake pads press onto your brake rotor. This causes friction, this causes heat. These pads, as we've already discussed, they're wearable, they're ceramic, they can be metallic, there's a bunch of different compounds that they can have, and that can mean different things, but we're not going to go over that. It's besides the point. While your brake pads are pressing against this spinning disc, it creates heat, it creates friction, these wear down, and that creates this thin film, I have it in red, this thin film of dust, gases that come off of the side of your brake pad touching your rotor. Now for those that might not be as mechanically inclined, this gas, these particles of dust that build up between your brake rotor and the disc itself isn't something to worry about. You don't need to go out and buy new brake rotors with these holes and these slots milled into them. The slots and the holes are really only for these super high performance applications. Heavy towing is a gray area. I wouldn't say you need it. They're nice, and we'll go over all that. But we'll talk about what they actually do now. And a lot of people think that they do the same thing. That's not actually the case. So these slots are actually to help vent out these gases that we talked about. They give them somewhere to go. They also have the added benefit of clearing any minor debris, small pieces of rock, small pieces of metal that might get stuck between your brake pad and your rotor. They can scrape it off. And again, for those that might know something about how brakes work, you would know that your brake pad actually has this slot cut into it, which is for venting gases. It works good enough for your everyday car, good enough for most towing applications, even good enough for most performance applications. It helps get rid of some of that gas and dust that builds up between your brakes and your disc. But on those high performance and high towing applications, it doesn't hurt to have a little bit more. These holes drilled into the side are not actually for venting any of these gases. These holes are actually to help cooling. And again, for those of you that know something about brakes, you would know that a lot of cars, even small cars, I think usually just the front, not the back brakes, will have these channels in the side of your rotor. These are also for cooling, and again, for everyday driving, they're good enough. That's perfect, works great. But on those track cars, on these heavy load downhill towing applications, you're hard on the brakes a lot, and that heat that builds up from the friction can warp the rotor, all even without having a broken caliper like I had. So far, these drills and slots sound great. Why wouldn't everybody have them? There are some downsides, not major, but they do exist. These slots can wear down your brake pads a little faster. It's not like gonna half the life of your brake pads, but it will probably cause a noticeable decrease in your brake life. It just shaves off tiny layers of it over time. The holes will actually make your rotor more prone to cracking. And when I say more prone, that doesn't mean it's going to crack. It just means there's an added likelihood. You will most likely never have to worry about that at all. Just the risk is there. Do I need drilled and slotted rotors? Probably not. I'm gonna be towing 12 to 14,000 pounds max. It's really not that much weight, but my rotors do need to get replaced because the one is warped. So I figured why not upgrade. The regular smooth surface discs are gonna be good enough for my truck to stop on, but there is that extra peace of mind knowing that I can stop harder and faster if I need to because of these brakes and what they do. I just thought it was worth it. They're not super expensive, and when you buy the kit, they will, for this kit at least, and I'll talk about the kit later, this kit will send you the pads with the rotors, which I wish I had a little more research on that because I thought they just sold the rotors. I replaced the brake pads when I went to replace my calipers. Wouldn't have done that if I'd known they would have come with these, but that was just me not doing my research. So the kit itself, these are from a company called PowerStop, and pretty easy to Google. They'll do the same thing any other car part catalog website will do. Year, make, and model of your vehicle. There's some extra options if you have a truck or fast car. It'll ask you if you do high performance stuff or you do heavy towing. It will show you some of their brakes that they want to offer you, ask you if you want fronts, ask you if you want just rears, or ask you if you want fronts and rears. And when you do all that, it'll give you a list of distributors. I guess you would say distributors. It'll give you a list of distributors. It'll send you to their website with the brakes that they have shown you that you picked out. I picked Amazon because I've never had a problem with their delivery. Had a lot of problems with other shipping companies like FedEx. Huge problems with them. Didn't want to deal with that again. So I just went with Amazon. I know they're going to send me my stuff. And if not, they have pretty good support. That would about wrap up this video. Probably not going to do an install for these. It's pretty straightforward. But if you want to see that, let me know in the comments. We can do an install video on my rears when I go to do those, because eventually I'm going to. Just not a priority right now. John on our channel does a lot of tool reviews. They're pretty good. He's very smart. Different brands. He does comparisons. Goes over toolboxes. He helped me with this one, put this one together, because I don't know anything about tools. If it's a wrench and it has a size on it, I'll use it. He's a lot smarter with that than I am. So make sure you check some of those videos out, and we'll catch you in the next one.